To give a little background information, this started in the winter of 2012. I was 23 years old at the time and living with my dad. My mom and my brother were living in another house about 10 minutes away from us. One morning I woke up around 8 a.m. because I had an early doctor's appointment, and I went outside to see a note pinned to the windshield wiper of our car. The note said, "I'm going to kill you, scum." I kinda just laughed it off. I assumed the note was for my dad, who had a habit of complaining to parents in our neighborhood about their children's shitty behavior. I thought one of the parents was just being a douchebag, so my dad and I didn't bother with it too much. Later in the day, while talking to my mom on the phone, I mentioned the note to her offhandedly in a very casual way, and I was shocked by her response. She responded by very emphatically warning me several times to make sure all of my windows and doors were locked, and to bring a weapon to bed with me at night. I was a bit taken aback, because she had never said anything like that to me before. She'd never even given me the good touch, bad touch talk. She reminded me that at least 12 times over the course of the conversation to bring a knife or a baseball bat to bed with me, and to lock my bedroom door at night. I thought she was just overreacting, so I waved her off. Then other weird things started happening. We started getting random packages and deliveries sent to our house. Bibles and Korans, newspapers, porn flyers, pizzas, and moving trucks that we hadn't ordered. The first few times it happened I thought it was a mistake, but as it kept happening I came to the conclusion that somebody must have been pulling a prank on us. We didn't know who it was, so there was nothing that we could do about it, but apologized profusely to yet another confused pizza delivery man. In September of that year, I started taking a night school class with my best friend. The course went from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. every Monday and Wednesday night, and after the class his mom would pick us up and drive us home. Sometime in November his mom dropped me off from school and I went inside and chilled on the couch for a couple of hours. I ended up falling asleep on the couch. Something woke me up abruptly at about 4 in the morning. I heard the unmistakable sound of a car tire being slashed, and it sounded like our car. What the hell was going on? We didn't have any enemies. In retrospect, this was probably a stupid thing to do, especially considering I'm a relatively small female, but I grabbed a kitchen knife and went outside to check it out. When I got outside, I discovered immediately that I was correct. There was a man in our driveway slashing our car tires. Unwisely, I immediately yelled, "Hey, you!" and he turned around to face me. That was when I noticed what he was slashing our tires with, an enormous hunting knife at least 6 inches long. He looked surprised, but then defiant, and began to advance towards me with the knife slightly raised. I just froze. I didn't know what to do. He was coming at me so fast I couldn't even think. Thankfully, at the exact second, my across-the-street neighbor, who had also heard him slashing our tires, turned on his porch light and yelled out the window, "Hey, I'm calling the cops!" The man yelled back, "I don't give a damn, call them!" But he quickly retreated back to his car where I could see a middle-aged woman with long brown hair waiting for him in the passenger seat. Our eyes locked and I knew instantly that we had met before, but I couldn't quite put my finger on when or where. I just knew in my gut that I had met this woman before. They sped off into the night and we called the cops, who said they couldn't do anything for us because they didn't know who had done it. I called my mom to tell her what had happened and if she had any idea who would have done this to us. She immediately said no, but there was something in her voice. I could just tell she wasn't being honest. A few weeks later I decided to go to my mom's house to spend a day or two, determined to get some answers. As soon as I walked in the front door, I knew something was wrong. The second she saw me, she just started bawling her eyes out. She took me by the hand and sat me on the couch and explained the whole story to me, start to finish. It's necessary for me to give a little background information. Here, my mother is a businesswoman by trade. On the side of her regular day job, she was also selling Arbonne makeup, which is an all-natural brand of makeup that is free from parabens, oils, sulfates, and other common cosmetic additives. A couple of months before this all started, she had ended up being referred to a new client named Andre by her weed dealer. Andre was her dealer's girlfriend. It's not a girl's name, is it? Oh my god. Oh, whatever. And she was interested in buying Arbonne. So my mom invited her over to her apartment to look at some makeup samples. They started chatting about a bit of various topics. My mom let it slip that her last name was Hayes. As my mom told me, Andre had paused for a few seconds, looked at her, and then said, "Hayes? Did you used to be married to a man named Darren Hayes?" My mom answered that yes, Darren Hayes was her ex-husband. Then shockingly, this Andre woman had actually burst into tears, threw her arms around my mom in a hug, and begun to tell her this horrific story about all of the disgusting things that my dad had done to her. Apparently she was 14 years old. She had been dating a man named Andrew, who happened to be living with my dad at the time during my parents' divorce. According to Andre, these men, her boyfriend Andrew, Andrew's twin brother Daniel, and my father had taken turns beating her, assaulting her, and then forcing her to prostitute herself in order to make money off of her. Eventually, they ended up selling her into child prostitution, from which she said she never recovered. This is where I'd recognized her from. My dad had become roommates with her boyfriend Andrew, and I used to see all three of them when I went over there to visit him every second weekend. She sobbed during the whole retelling of this story, telling my mother how after this traumatic experience, she had turned to drugs and alcohol to numb the pain of her abuse, and that she had been addicted to crack and alcohol off and on ever since because of what my father had done to her. My mom was shocked. She didn't know what to do. On the other hand, she knew my father to be a generous, soft-spoken, and kind person who had never lifted a finger to her or any other person, and who rarely raised his voice. But on the other hand, it seemed odd that Andre would just happen to remember his name all these years later if she had been lied. She didn't know who to believe. After several hours of crying and much consoling on my mother's part, Andre finally left. This was when the stalking began. A few days after this encounter, my mother came home from work to find Andre's boyfriend sitting on her couch, waiting for her. He immediately told her that he was planning on killing my dad, that my dad deserved to die because he was a pedo piece of shit, and that if my mom told anybody at all, especially the cops, that he would be sure to kill me as well. He then concluded his threat by describing the layout of our living room and exactly what outfit I was wearing that day. From then on, he and Andre would text or call her several times a day to threaten and taunt her, telling her that they were going to call the cops on my dad and have him thrown in prison, that they were going to have him killed, and that if she told anybody, they would hire someone to murder me. Naturally, my mother was absolutely terrified. She was from an upper-middle-class family who had immigrated to Canada from Germany. She had never dealt with this type of person before. She stopped eating, she couldn't sleep, and she even stopped going to work. She lost 30 pounds and her hair started falling out from stress. She started having panic attacks because she didn't know what to do. Eventually, after the night when I almost got stabbed, she decided that she had to call the cops. She couldn't take the chance that they would hurt me. She had to do something about it, and what she found out was shocking. Andre was well known to the police. When my mom told them this story, she was so well known that they weren't even surprised to hear her story. In fact, they told her Andre had done this exact same thing to at least a dozen men. She would meet and blackmail men into giving her money, electronics, drugs, etc., threatening to call the cops and report them for assault if they didn't. Her boyfriend was a drug dealer, and as it turned out, would often use his drug connections to intimidate and extort the men, and for some reason, he never questioned her stories of being abused and enslaved by all of these different men. Then when Andre, who was a crack and heroin addict and a prostitute, would get arrested on a possession or drug distribution charge, she would attempt to make deals with the police by offering them information about men who were pedos in exchange for less time in prison. She eventually did this so many times that the police stopped believing in her. After my mom called the cops, the whole story came undone, and Andrea and her boyfriend haven't bothered us since. But it's been over a year since the whole thing happened, and I'm still terrified to leave the curtains open at nighttime, in case somebody is watching me. I don't think I'll ever be able to feel fully safe in this house ever again, so Andre, let's not meet again, ever. A few years ago, I had to fully rely on public transportation to get around anywhere. I had to catch the bus at around 3:34 a.m. That was about 3/4 of a mile from my house to get to work. The street I had to walk down was mostly residential, and what businesses were there were closed. Only dim street lights lit the road, so basically it was a quiet road with no one around and dim lighting. A bit of info on me. I am a woman and was in my mid-20s. Usually the walk went fine. I could get there fairly quickly. This particular morning, though, was not so fine. I got about halfway to the bus stop when I noticed a white car was parked across the street at a closed business. I couldn't tell how many people were in the car, or their gender or what, but it struck me as odd. I hoped that maybe it was a couple making out or something, but once I passed it, it turned out of the parking lot and drove past me. I did not like that, and I made sure to walk as far from the street as possible. He U-turned up ahead and slowly drove back the other way until he could U-turn again, then drive past me once more. He parked in another lot across the street and waited for me to pass. At this point I'm freaked out because if he decided he wanted to snatch me up, there would have been no witnesses whatsoever. I got my phone out and dialed 911, but didn't place the call right away. But when he pulled out again to drive past me, I made the call. At this point I have 911 on the phone, and he finally pulls out and rolls his window down. I should note that I am generally a pushover and too mild-mannered for my own good. I usually let a man talk to me, even when I don't want them to, until I can find a way out. This time I was so scared that I would not let him say much. I thought he said, "You missed it," as in the bus, but you can see the bus stop from down the road where I started walking from, so I knew I hadn't missed it. I said, "No, no, no. No ride, no ride, no." And he kept saying, "Babe," or "Hey," over and over. But once he saw my phone lit up, he drove away. I hung up because the adrenaline was insane, and I needed to calm down. I had not actually talked to anyone. They called me back to make sure I was okay. I filled them in and told them I thought the guy was gone. He never did come back that I know of. Thankfully, the bus didn't run late that morning, and I made it safely to work. From that day on, I tried wearing clothes that didn't accent my curves. Once I got a car, I haven't looked back at public transportation or long walks in the dark. I moved to a new town around 2 weeks ago. It is around 4 hours away from where I lived previously. I only knew 2 people who lived in this town, literally. I know no one. The 2 people are a couple who lived next door to me and my mom. On Friday, I received a message saying hi. I did not reply to it. It was from a number I did not recognize, and I am really not good with texting people back, so like I said, I did not reply. On Sunday, I received another message. I did not actually check my phone until Monday. Like I said, I am awful with it, and most of the time, it lives in the bottom of my bag. This one said, "I see you," and they had taken a picture of me walking down the street carrying shopping bags with my mom. They then sent another message saying, "I also saw you here too." This was a picture of me in a pub with the couple I know. After that I was creeped out, obviously, so I sent them a message saying, "Who is this?" It can't be the couple as they sat right next to me in the picture, and the photo had been taken from far away. Around 10 minutes later, I got a message from this person. They had taken another picture of me, but this time it was while I was eating food with the girl of the couple I know. And it said, "Did you enjoy your burger?" This time I said, "Who the fuck is this? This is creeping me out. Tell me who you are." They read my message but have not replied to it. I have phoned the number, and all I hear when I phone is a man breathing heavily. I think. I literally do not know what to do. Should I be scared? I have no idea how they got my number. What do I do? Do I go to the police and show them the creepy pictures? So this happened in 2000, when I was like 13 or 14, but my aunt only told me the full story recently, and it's absolutely terrifying. When I was a teenager, my favorite aunt used to pick me up after school to babysit her 3 boys while she went to work part-time. She'd recently separated from her husband, so I was helping out pretty much every day at this point. We had a routine. We'd eat dinner and play in the yard until the sun went down, but one day she told me not to take the boys out at all. She then launched into this whole safety lecture, and I thought it was weird. Fast forward about a week and I come over one day to a security company installing an alarm system in the house. My aunt tells me to come in the kitchen. She tells me that for weeks she's been finding cigarette butts and food wrappers in the bushes, and that she heard a cough in the bushes, so she went outside to investigate. She found a guy squatting there, face pressed against the window, and proceeded to lose her shit. He snarled at her and said,
"Bitch, I'm not looking at you. I'm looking for that pretty babysitter of yours,"
before running off. She called the police, but they didn't catch him, and kept patrolling the neighborhood for a while after. Eventually she calmed down, and things returned to normal. We were allowed to play in the yard again after a few weeks, and I forgot all about it. Last week the story came up at a family barbecue, and my aunt got really quiet and pale. She said that there was more to the story, and since I'm 30 now, I should probably hear the rest. It turns out, a guy matching the description she had given the cops was arrested about a week later for assaulting a teenage girl in an apartment complex 1 block from her house. It's terrifying to think this piece of shit excuse for a human had been watching me for who knows how long, and what he was planning to do, and what he did to someone else. At the time of my story, my friend and I were 28 and both of us under 130 pounds. We had done a lot of hiking together, but we hadn't ever been camping together, so we decided to camp at a popular location in western Oregon in early May. We choose a large campground, one that comprises of 2 to 3 separate loops, each loop with 25 plus campsites. By the time we got there, we realized that the park was empty. Although a bit creeped out by the emptiness, we decided to make a camp. We chose a prime spot. The campsite was located down a flight of stairs, so our car was above us. We are both avid hikers and spend the day hiking at the foothills of the Cascades and around the nearby lake. This is a general store for the campground, somewhat near the lake, and we were surprised that not only was it open, but there were a few people in it. 2 of those people were guys in their early 20s who had a case of beer with them, and they were very interested in us, but only leered. Nobody said hello. Both of us got the creeps from them. Nightfall at the campsite, we had a fire going, a great campsite set up, but we were very aware of how alone we were out there. Around 10:30-11, we hear a very loud truck off in the distance. Within 10 minutes, we hear the truck driving around the loop. Mind you, there are no other campers in our loop. The trucks slow down past our car, then zooms off. We kicked around the idea that it was a ranger, but a ranger would call out to us. We both knew it was the 2 guys from earlier. My gut told me to get out of there and do it fast. So we started scrambling to take apart our campsite, practically running up and down the flight of stairs, unable to see the road. We are both at the campsite, and we hear that damn truck in the distance again. 10 minutes or so later, we hear the truck driving along the loop. This time the truck doesn't just slow down, it stops by our car. I grab an axe, she grabs the beer spray, and we wait. Adrenaline is a funny thing. We were both prepared to fight since there was nowhere to run. So at that very moment, I wasn't scared. Then the truck sped off. Fear set in and we were shoving what was left of our camp into the car, literally just stuffing the tent in the back. When we were getting in the car to go, we hear the truck again. We sped off ourselves. There's no way the people in the truck had good intentions. At the very least, they were just trying to scare us. I believe the two guys were getting drunk and thought it would be a good idea to find two girls they saw at the lake. I don't think they wanted to ask our permission to party. From then on out, I've made very different decisions when it comes to camping and hiking. This happened last summer. I was playing video games when my mom asked me to come down the stairs. It was the late afternoon, and since she was cooking dinner, she asked me to take something to the mailbox. So I did just that. I put on my shoes and went outside, letter in hand, not taking my phone or anything with me. I crossed the street and made my way to the four-way intersection at the end of our block. Crossed to where the mailbox is, that's when I noticed him. There was a man in the car on the other side of the intersecting street I was about to cross. He looked about mid-60s in age, white, bald, and terrifying. He just sat there staring at me in his black SUV. I could sense something was wrong. I've never gotten that feeling before. He was on the left side of the street, his car right next to the curb. In an instant, I knew what was going on. For some reason, that didn't stop me from trying to cross the street anyway. I crossed the street intersecting ours to the mailbox and heard him slowly make a left turn and saw him pull up right behind me. I swore under my breath and knew he was trying to kidnap me. I was afraid he would get out of his car, and as quickly as I could, I put the letter in the mailbox and ran back across the street. I made it back to my street and noticed he was gone. There is rarely crime where I live, and honestly, it still scares me to this day. I don't know why he was just sitting there, other than maybe he was a kidnapper. That night, my parents were going to be out, and so I was home alone. It had just gotten dark when I hear the doorbell ring. I don't think I had ever been so scared in my life. After about a minute, I peeked my head into the hall, and it looked like my parents' car was out front, and so I assumed that maybe they had gotten locked out of the house and answered the door. A lady stood there that I had never seen before. She told me she lived down the street and was out driving earlier when she had seen me near the mailbox and the old guy following me. She pulled right up behind him, sitting on his bumper. She knew what was going on. She had come to my house to tell me she saw exactly what happened and that she was close if I ever needed anything. To this day it terrifies me, thinking about the fact that if she hadn't been outside driving at the exact time, I might be in a completely different place now. Later that year, I heard reports of a kidnapper a few blocks away from where mine was. Nothing has been reported on my local news about it, so I can only hope he's gone now.
Alright, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, share on Facebook, share on Twitter, share on Instagram. I don't give a shit where you share it, just share it. Thank you for watching.